This is not just a controversy anymore. This is a full-blown crisis. A Formula One crash, predicted weeks in advance, by multiple drivers, ignored by the FIA, and then finally happening at over 300 kilometers per hour. 50 g. That's the kind of impact that changes careers, or ends them. And here's the part that makes this even worse. This wasn't caused by driver error. This wasn't bad weather. This wasn't even a mechanical failure. This was caused by the rules themselves. A system so unstable, it creates massive speed differences, with zero warning, and no time to react. Drivers said it would happen. Engineers explained how it would happen. And Suzuka proved them right. Now the FIA is being forced into an emergency review, just days before Miami, a track that could make this problem even more dangerous. And here's the question no one inside Formula One can answer yet. Are they fixing the problem? Or just delaying the next disaster? Subscribe now, because the detail everyone is missing is exactly why this situation is far from over. The crisis didn't begin with the crash. It began with something far more dangerous. Agreement. Because by the time the season started, too many drivers were saying the same thing. Not similar things. The exact same problem. Melbourne was supposed to be a fresh start. New era. New rules. New direction for the sport. But within just a few laps, something felt off. Not broken, but unstable. Max Verstappen described it first. Not with anger. With sarcasm. He said it felt like a video game. Cars suddenly gaining speed. Then losing it. Overtakes that didn't feel real. At first, people laughed. It sounded exaggerated. But here's where it gets serious. When the best driver on the grid starts comparing Formula One to something artificial. That's not humor. That's discomfort. And that discomfort spreads. Charles Leclerc says something similar. Different words. Same meaning. Sudden bursts of speed. Then equality again. Not pure racing. Managed outcomes. And now you have two completely different drivers arriving at the same conclusion. Independently. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. But the real turning point comes next. Because Carlos Sainz changes the conversation completely. He stops talking about racing. And starts talking about risk. He says the speed differences on the straights will cause an accident. Not could. Will. And everything shifts in that moment. Because Formula One drivers don't use that kind of certainty lightly. They understand consequences. They calculate risk for a living. So when someone like Sainz speaks like that, you listen. Or at least, you're supposed to. But here's where the problem begins. The FIA doesn't react immediately. They observe. They analyze. They discuss internally. And under normal circumstances, that would be the correct process. But this isn't normal. Because while the discussions are happening, the danger is still on track. Lap after lap. Race after race. And here's the key detail most people missed. This wasn't about one team. Or one car. This was affecting everyone. Different ways. Different intensities. But the same core issue. Unpredictable speed changes. And that unpredictability is what turns speed into danger. Now add one more layer. Lando Norris wins. And still criticizes the system. He admits something that should never happen in Formula One. That the victory didn't feel completely right. Not because he didn't drive well. But because the system played too big a role. And when even the winners start questioning the system, you don't have a small issue anymore. You have a structural problem. Then Fernando Alonso delivers the most important insight of all. He doesn't focus on speed. He focuses on unpredictability. Because speed has always been part of Formula One. Drivers can handle speed. They train for it. They expect it. But unpredictability, that's different. That's where control disappears. And once control disappears, everything else follows. By the end of Melbourne, the pattern is clear. Multiple drivers. Multiple teams. Same warning. Same concern. And yet, no decisive action. Just monitoring. Just small adjustments being considered. And that delay, that hesitation, is exactly what allows the next phase of this story to unfold. Because what happens after Melbourne doesn't calm the situation. It accelerates it. And what comes next is where the warning becomes impossible to ignore. China is where everything stops being subtle. This is where the warning turns into pressure. Because now, the system isn't just questionable. It's affecting races directly. From the very first sessions, drivers feel it again. But stronger. More obvious. More difficult to ignore. Long straights. Heavy braking zones. Exactly the conditions where the problem grows. And suddenly, what looked strange in Melbourne now looks dangerous. Max Verstappen changes tone completely. No more jokes. No more comparisons. He calls it what it is. A disaster. He says he can't attack properly. Can't defend properly. Can't even trust how the car will behave from one moment to the next. And that's critical. Because in Formula 1, trust in the car is everything. Without it, you're not driving at the limit. You're surviving it. Now think about that. One of the most precise drivers in the world, saying he cannot rely on the system. That's not frustration. That's instability. And instability at those speeds is where things begin to break. Then Lando Norris adds another layer. And this one hits even deeper. He says the racing is becoming artificial. Overtakes happening, not because of skill, but because one car has energy and the other doesn't. And that changes how everything feels. For the drivers, for the teams, for the people watching. Because if the outcome depends on timing systems, more than driver input, then what are we really watching? That question starts to spread. Quietly at first, then louder. Now Esteban Ocon describes the moment that matters most. The one that connects everything. He talks about looking in the mirror, and suddenly seeing a car arriving, much faster than expected. No warning. No gradual closing. Just instant pressure. And in that moment, you don't know what to do. Move aside. Hold position. Commit to the corner. There isn't enough time to decide. And that's the key. Time disappears. At those speeds, even a fraction of a second matters. Now combine all of this. Unpredictable speed. Artificial overtakes. Drivers losing trust. No time to react. And you get something Formula 1 cannot allow. A pattern. Because once the same situation appears, across different races, with different drivers, in different cars, it stops being coincidence. It becomes inevitable. And that's exactly what's happening here. By the end of China, the conversation has changed completely. This is no longer about improving the show. It's about preventing what comes next. And everyone in the paddock knows it. Drivers speak more openly, more directly, less filtered. Even those who benefit from the system start to question it. And that's when pressure reaches a new level. Because now, there is no opposition, no divided opinion, just one growing consensus. Something is wrong, something serious, and it needs to be fixed. But here's where the situation becomes critical. The FIA still doesn't make a decisive move. Small adjustments, minor changes, enough to show response, not enough to remove the risk. And that hesitation is what transforms this from a technical issue into a countdown. Because every lap, every race, brings the system closer to its limit. And once that limit is reached, there is no warning left, only consequence. Which means by the time Formula 1 arrives in Suzuka, the question is no longer if something will happen. It's when. And what happens there is exactly what everyone was trying to avoid. Suzuka was never just another race. It was the breaking point. Because by the time Formula 1 arrived in Japan, everyone already knew. The drivers knew. The teams knew. Even the FIA knew. This system wasn't stable. It was just waiting. Waiting for the exact moment where everything would align in the worst possible way. And here's what makes this moment so important. The warnings didn't stop before the race. They intensified. Drivers weren't suggesting changes anymore. They were expecting consequences. Carlos Sainz said it clearly. This wasn't just a qualifying issue. This would happen in the race. With fuel loads. With tire degradation. With different battery states across the grid. More variables. More unpredictability. More risk. And then comes the most unsettling detail of all. Less than one day before the crash, a driver describes the exact scenario. Large speed differences. Complicated situations in traffic. The need for immediate action. And that driver was Oliver Bearman. That's what makes Suzuka different. This wasn't hindsight. This wasn't analysis after the fact. This was a real-time warning from the driver who would become the victim. And no one stopped it. So when the race begins, everything is already in motion. The system is still there, unchanged where it matters most. Cars behave normally, until suddenly, they don't. Lap after lap, you can see it happening. Speed spikes, then sudden drops. Cars arriving too fast, others slowing too much. And every driver feels it. That tension, that uncertainty. Because they don't know when the system will turn against them. Now imagine driving at that level, at those speeds, knowing that what happens ahead of you might not follow any predictable pattern. That's not racing anymore. That's anticipation of risk. And that changes how you drive. Slight hesitation in one moment, overcommitment in another. Tiny differences, that at 300 kilometers per hour, become massive. So when the moment finally arrives, it doesn't feel surprising. It feels inevitable. One car enters a critical energy state, loses speed abruptly. Another car approaches, fully committed. Everything calculated, based on normal behavior. But this isn't normal anymore. The gap closes too quickly. The situation compresses. Time disappears. Options disappear. And in that instant, every warning becomes reality. The reaction is instinctive. But instinct isn't enough. Not at that speed. Not in that moment. Control is lost. Grip disappears. And the car becomes unstoppable. Straight into the wall. Violent. Sudden. 50G. And just like that, the entire debate ends. Because now, there is no argument left. No theory. No speculation. Only proof. And proof forces action.